recorded and will be posted on the town's YouTube channel.
So let's see how do I do. All right, so let me call the meeting. I have another minute left to call the meeting.
You don't want to start early.
No. How are you, Rich?
I'm good. Can't complain. Who would listen?
Huh?
I can't complain, and who would listen?
All right. Hey, Jason, how are you?
Good. Good evening, everyone.
All right, so I see 7:30 on my computer, so I'd like to call the meeting to order. And the first item on business is to approve the minutes of January 26th, 2021. Do I hear any motions for that? Any comments on it?
I'd make a motion to approve it.
Is there a second? Frank seconds. Okay. Are there any discussions, comments on the minutes? Any corrections? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Approved unanimously by Frank, Rich, James, and Randy. Man, I don't know about Rob. Rob's like Is Rob I don't think he's a member of this committee, is he?
I don't think he's a member
I
either.
don't think so. Okay.
Although
So
he
just,
wants to be. He can be.
well, I don't know. I don't know if you could have more than what would be a quorum on the WPCA.
He's coming in as a citizen, but
As
if
a
you wanted
citizen,
to add,
yeah, that's
you'd have to formally appoint him to be the member.
I thought I was part of the design task force at one time. If I'm not, I'll gladly not join your meetings.
I think maybe, well, I forget, maybe you're an alternate.
Did you get an email from me, Rob?
Yes, I did.
Then you're on it because I took your group, I just took everyone that was at the original ones and put it as a WPCA task force group. I don't write down everyone's name and email them separately. Okay.
I think Rob's an alternate, which, means he can participate in everything, but unless you
Right.
appoint him as a full member in place of somebody who's missing.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad we got that settled. So now we're on to business. So business item 1, discuss the merits of inquiring if new zoning needs to be approved to move force main on Portland Avenue. So speaking with Jason from the last meeting, the beach associations are hesitant to move the force main on Portland Avenue off the top of our, or very close to the top of our sewer line, because they feel as though they would need to go through zoning again. I find that unusual. I've worked on a lot of projects where there are field changes done in the field that are based on basically an inspector's or the engineer's representative saying, yeah, you're gonna have to move it, and you move it. So I just finished one in Guilford. Then an electric line that no one knew buried on one side of the road. We moved the force main, well, actually it was a water main, to the other side. There was no zoning. I mean, that was the engineer approved it, and that was it. So I don't know. I wanted to bring this up for discussion because if and Rich has more insight into this than I do as far as the town. If we can make inquiries to the town to see if we would need to rezone it, or to say we'd like to move it over because of this. I mean, if that's their only excuse not to move it, it'll cause major problems for us if by chance they put the force main in before we put the sewer in. That's the only concern I really have.
Well,
It's also, if you have to repair the sewer, you have to go under the force main, but I mean, that's, you know, long time coming for that.
the zoning approval was conditioned that if they changed their plan, they have to go back for approval again. So it's not a normal thing, it's a Town of Old Lyme thing. And if they have to
What
go
do they
back
mean
for
by-
approval, they hold up their clean water funds.
What do they mean by, change the plan though? Like the concept or the location?
The design they submitted, which is the location of the pipes and everything, the approval was conditional that if they change it, they come back to the Town of Old Lyme zoning for reapproval.
Huh. So that's interesting because I'm sure somewhere along the line, there's gonna be a portion of that project that the contractor is going to wanna change something due to existing conditions that aren't foreseen. And theoretically or technically, that would require them to have to go back to the town zoning department to redo their zoning?
Yes. They had a discussion about, can we, put the design and let the engineers define, engineering change orders requirements, and that was denied. So it's in the meeting minutes, and I'm sure Fuss and O'Neill can confirm this if there's any doubt.
Well, no, that we're getting that from Fuss and O'Neill.
Yeah, well, I mean, because they were against it, because I think they recognize the same issues that you recognize. They're in the business of that.
Right.
I mean, I get it. I mean, a lot of times you have designs and you have an engineer look at it and they get into the field and they see like a big boulder in their way. It's like, well, we got to go around there or something, as an example. But I could also see the zoning's point of view where they're saying, we don't want you to go change something dramatically, and then we end up looking like fools that we approved something that we didn't approve.
Well, I can understand that point, but this certainly wouldn't fall into that category. I mean, this is locating the elevation and by a few feet where the line is going to run is what happens in the real world. I mean, I don't know. I guess we'll have to go back and talk to them. Right? So.
Well, I mean, I was told that, yeah, it's a challenge, but it happens all the time. They put one pipe in and they put another pipe underneath it or crisscross it, and the contractors don't like it, but it happens.
Well, Rich, yes, it does happen, but not on new construction. On new construction, you put the deepest pipe in first and you work your way up.
Right.
You don't.
Well, the other, you're right. In the scenario of that is that we're not ready. So do we delay they're the private beach associations connecting the force main. And remember, they have a clock that's ticking. They don't have like, oh, we can delay this a couple of years. They have to start, and some contracts run out and they have to renegotiate those contracts. So they're going to move forward whether we're ready or not. The best thing is that we get ready, and let's say we do get ready, which I think we're getting close to getting our agreements in place. We could approach the zoning department, review those minutes, and approach them to see if they would allow a change and say that this change is inconsequential. You know, that might help fix it. What do you think?
Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, the reason we don't move our sewer, gravity sewer to the other side is because the water main is there, correct?
Correct. Yeah, right now the force main, the way we laid it out, the force main would essentially be going almost through the manholes. Because, you know, obviously the manholes are, you know, 5-foot diameter, outside diameter. So yeah, to move it away from the force main, we're moving closer to the water line, which is also frowned upon.
Does anyone have an idea of how I mean, I don't know I don't know when the beaches are going to bid this, but certainly the beaches said they're going to work through the summer. So whenever the plans are ready, I'm sure they're going to bid it. There isn't I mean, for us, if the plans aren't ready next month, we're not going to bid it, and you know, construction won't start until at least September. I mean, I actually think September is a tough mark to get someone out there to bid.
For us, yes, but for them,
Yeah,
they
for them.
probably could start construction in September or after the summer. That's
Right.
reasonable. They've got variables that we're going to face. You know, they've got certs and this and that, you know, but last I heard, you know, it's possible if everything goes right that they build after the summer. And we're behind them.
Right. I mean, we're not much behind them, but we are behind them.
Yeah, we have a couple documents that fall into place, and then we have to go through zoning like they did, and we have to go through apply some certain certs. I mean, they're doing some work that we can leverage. You know, so it's, you know, in the perfect world we could catch up. But so I mean, one plan is that we catch up. Second plan is that we plan for not being able to fix this issue. And the third thing, and I'm not saying this is the right order, is we, you know, they don't want to change because they don't want to stop their plan and they don't want to go back to zoning. Do we want to go to zoning and ask?
Well, I think we have to. I really do. Think we have to go to zoning and explain that to be honest with you, I don't know how we would, the extra costs in putting a sewer main underneath the force main is at least $1 million. I guarantee, well, I don't know how many feet that is on Portland Avenue, but whatever it is, I mean, you have to support it. You have to support it. It's the worst scenario that you could possibly ask for, is to have a full water main underneath a pipe that you're putting in the ground. I mean, well, it's not a water main, it's a force main, but it's the same thing. It's under pressure. You know, it's not a you try to avoid it at all costs. I mean, it's expensive to do. It's extremely expensive to do.
It also poses real difficulties if you have a problem in the future because of the support requirements in
Right.
order to go and work on it. I mean, I think just from my point of view, from experience working on sewer systems, I'm not a contractor like Steve, but you know, I live in that world. Jason, certainly you know more than I do on the particulars, but it seems to me it would be the most prudent thing to do would be to go to zoning, have some unofficial discussion with people, and then put it before them at the earliest possible meeting, and just say, look, yeah, it's a slight change in the plan, but it's going to save the town a bunch of money, and it's going to save us a lot of aggravation and intrusion in the future should there be a problem. Those are
And
my
it's still in the road. And it's
Yeah.
still in the road.
right.
God. James, did you have a comment?
No.
Oh, I thought you.
No.
Okay. I agree with Randy. I think that either one of us, I mean, I'm more than happy to talk to some people and get their take on it in town and report back, but it would be remiss not to at least attempt to change the location of that force main. We're not doing the people that our customers, we're doing them a disservice by saying, well, that's zoning and that's it. Because there is no other place to put the sewer. There is no other place to put our sewer line. There is another place to put the force main. So, but should we have, Rich, let me ask your opinion. Do we have a motion to do that, or what do you think?
I think you're in more research still. I don't think you're in the territory of emotion. Emotion would be required if you're going to take a decisive action, like approve this, approve that, or do this or do that. Right now, if you're going to say, I'm going to go talk to the zoning department and I'm going to look up the zoning wording and then ask the zoning department if their interpretation is the same as what we're being told, that we can't change the pipe 2 feet in this direction, which requires a design drawing change. And then you kind of get an informal thing. And then depending on that, then you might come back and say, we'll have a discussion with the beach associations, which we have to make sure that they don't misunderstand this and end up thinking that we're trying to screw them or do something. They're very sensitive about these things.
Right. I guess, I mean, well, it does matter even if we did put the sewer in first, they put the force main above it. When that sewer line, gravity sewer line fails, which it will eventually, something always fails. It would be difficult, but it's a lot easier to work on a specific point than it is to actually lay a line underneath something. How many feet would we want to move that force main?
It would be approximately 2 or 3 feet.
2 or 3 feet.
So there's no place that we can move our design, that they have to move the force main, right? And I guess that's to Jason.
Right. If we move the gravity line, then we're closer to the water line.
And
Which
we're in the keep out zone.
Right. Exactly.
All right, so
Hey, this is Aaron Brennan here. Just wanted to pop in.
I'm sorry, Aaron? Aaron?
I'm with Woodard and Curran.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the sewer main is approximately 10 feet away from the water main, which is generally you want to avoid putting a sewer main any closer than 10 feet to a water main, if you can help it. So that's generally what we're trying to accomplish by moving the force main like 2 to 3 feet to the east, just to allow that to be maintained.
Thank you. All right, so I think that if no one disagrees, I can reach out to some people in the town zoning and see unless someone else. I mean, I know some people on zoning, but I know, well, I probably don't have the best relationship with Jane. I gave quite a mouthful when they're trying to get that low-income housing in that ridiculous spot, or affordable housing in that ridiculous spot. It's pretty outspoken on that. But I do know other
You weren't
people on
alone,
zoning.
so.
No, I know I wasn't alone, but I was certainly pretty vocal. Unless someone else wants to contact the town, I'll take it upon myself to discuss it with them.
Could I just make a suggestion, Steve? I
Sure.
think if you talk to Tim Griswold, and
Yeah, that's my
Tim
first.
Tim knows everybody there really well. I think if we tried that and worked it through him and explained the situation, I mean, this is all logic, right? I mean,
Right.
there's nothing inconsequential about doing it the other way. So this is the logical thing that we would do in any other project, and it serves the town better and it costs the town less money, both long and short term. So I think we talk to Tim and have him help kind of pave the way for a discussion. If I can help over the phone or whatever, you let me know. I'll be glad to do that. Why don't we at least take that course of action?
Yeah,
and then move forward?
That's who I was going to contact first. But why don't you and I set up a phone conference or something with Tim?
That's fine.
And we'll go in or a meeting or whatever. Tim will understand it, I'm pretty sure.
He will.
You know,
I'll be happy
I
to
think
do that.
I think zoning will too. I think zoning will too. It's just I think it's going to be more a matter of how zoning goes about agreeing to it more than the actual concept of it. But
I think most of the folks on that commission will be able to understand the logic.
so, okay, so that's what we'll do there is we'll make contact with Tim first and follow his direction on how we can proceed and get that at least addressed one way or the other. James?
No?
No, one second. When I see
No.
your thing is when it lights up blue, I think that you want to speak.
Oh.
That's all. That's why I keep saying. Does anyone else have anything to add to item I1?
Yeah, just one little note about zoning. I believe there's actually a different chairperson now. It's no longer Jane. I don't know who it is, but it's someone
Oh,
different.
all right. Jane's term was up? Oh, probably in November.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Thanks, Rob. She was. It's weird.
It's Paul Orzo.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
That's right.
Oh,
I'd forgotten.
Yeah. So even though she didn't win in 2020, her term ended in 2021. It's, I think, the only committee that the chair stays on, even, their whole term, regardless of if they were reelected or not.
Right.
It's weird. Yeah. So thanks, Rob. I appreciate that. At least I don't have to see Jane again.
She's
Okay,
still the
let's go on.
secretary. So,
Is she really?
yep.
Oh, because they go down. So let's go to item 2. If there's no more comments on item 1. Item 2 is discuss use of grinder pumps, maintenance and costs, make recommendation to full WPCA. So at the last WPCA meeting, we discussed using grinder pumps versus gravity versus tying into the beach association's sewer line and the problems with metering that sewer going in there. And I think we were basically tasked to discuss, how we want to handle basically area B, but it could be, there could be some outliers also in different areas that it just doesn't make sense to put to lower the whole line for one or two homes. So you'd have grinder pumps in several different locations, but I think correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, it would be 9 or 10?
Yes, I believe, yeah, 9 to 11, correct. Yep.
9 to 11,
Yep.
okay. So we're looking at that. Based on my experience, and like I said at the meeting, it's just my experience. I've installed grinder pumps for a number of towns, and in general, most towns will purchase the grinder pump, pay for the installation, and maintain it as part of their sewer system. This is part of a full project. It shouldn't. To get this project to function properly, we as a group said, well, we're not going to put gravity sewer in because it's not cost effective. It's much more cost effective to put grinder pumps in. So it's not necessarily the homeowner's choice to have a grinder pump. It's our choice. And as such, it's really part of our system. And I believe that the WPCA in the long run is far better served to purchase the grinders, install them, and maintain them, and have the homeowner pay for the electricity, which Jason had given me some information. It's like $2 a month, and it's not a ridiculous amount of money to operate these things. But in general, in my discussion with Jason, the WPCAs that do maintain them generally have less problems overall because they're maintaining them, versus someone that says, well, it didn't work, I'll do something and just to get it to work again, and then there's more problems. So that's my take on it, is that those should be part of our system and maintained like any other component of our system. But that's my opinion. Discussion on that, Randy?
I think I agree with that. I think if we were going to tie them into the pipe into the system, it would be part of the system. So I think that's probably appropriate. I think Rich has some concerns on the maintenance side that he raised, if my memory serves me right, in our last meeting. So I'd certainly want to hear what he has to say about that, but I would agree with you conceptually that it's part of the system. So makes sense.
Frank, do you want to weigh in on this?
Well, no, I think it makes sense. Yeah. Once you put the grinder pumps into part of the systems, really, we have to maintain that whole system, and I don't think it would be fair to charge the property owners extra for the part of the system.
Yeah, Steve, this is James.
James.
I agree with that too. I mean, the last time we talked about it and went over the benefit of putting the grinder pumps in, that would be less costly in the long run, having us, install them, maintain them, probably be the right way to go.
Did we lose Rich?
Yeah, we've lost him. I don't know.
I see him down below, but I don't see his picture anymore.
No, same here.
And so we have a meeting next week. I'd like to have a motion that we actually make this recommendation to the full WPCA for action. That the design task force is recommending to the full WPCA that we purchase, install, and maintain the grinder pumps that have to be installed, and the homeowner is responsible for the electricity that needs to be supplied, which is a minimal charge.
Right. I would make that motion.
Is there a second? James seconds. Randy's first. 2, 3. I would like Rich's opinion here.
Yeah.
Rich?
I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Now we
Yeah,
can.
we can hear you
It's-
now.
I'm having a little trouble with my internet for some reason. So I guess I'll abstain from this vote because I can't really hear what was all the details.
Well, we're basically, I'd like you to weigh in before we vote. It's only been seconded. The motion is that this task force recommend to the full WPCA that the purchase, maintenance, and installation costs of the grinder pumps be covered by the WPCA, and that the electricity costs would be covered by the homeowner, which in discussions with Jason, he says about $2 a month. So that's the motion that Randy made, James seconded, and we can still have, I would like your input, Rich.
Yeah, I can't really hear that well. I'm going to switch to a different mode. Continue on without me until I get back.
All right. All right, all in favor of that motion with Rich abstaining? Say aye. Frank, James, and Randy say aye. Rob?
My official, then aye.
Aye. Says aye, so it's 4 ayes and abstain due to technical problems. And that would be it on that. So I'll summarize this for Rich so that he can put it into the agenda for next week's meeting. There was some discussion about the bioxide location and if it being required by the downstream WPCAs. So this was something that Jason and I touched on briefly. I believe maybe even Dennis, that they don't really, some people don't like the location of the bioxide, even though we're not locating it. But I've installed bioxide injection systems, and I discussed it with Jason because I found it odd that they're putting it right into the force main, because bioxide is there to minimize the effects of hydrogen sulfide and the smell that it gives off. And usually it's put in the wet well because that's where it's open to the atmosphere. Here we're injecting it into the force main. And so the only people that really benefit are like the East Lyme WPCA, the Waterford WPCA in London. It's really, it provides Old Lyme no real benefit because once it's in the force main, it's a sealed system all the way to the next atmospheric stop, which would be the Brybrook pump station.
Let me just ask.
Sure.
Sorry, Steve, let me just ask a question to Jason. Is it calcium nitrate Is that the bioxide we're using? Or?
It's calcium sulfate.
I believe
Calcium
that's
sulfate.
yeah, I believe that's correct. Yeah, this is part of the Fuss and O'Neill design, but yeah, bioxide's a proprietary blend, but yeah, sulfate is the primary ingredient.
So if you're using calcium sulfate, you're looking to tie up sulfide in solution so that you don't odors, which will also reduce corrosion. But I would agree with Steve that the normal route for that chemistry is to put it in a wet well. If you were injecting calcium nitrate, which is a different formulation, that's used to penetrate the biofilm inside the pipeline itself and let the sulfate reducing bacteria utilize the nitrate rather than the sulfate ion. So it's a different chemistry. So I would agree with you if we're talking about sulfate-based bioxide. I think we ought to probably check that. But if that's the case, it will serve Old Lyme better to be injected in the wet well. I would concur with that. That's something I've got some experience with. So.
Well, there's the reason why it's being built where it is there's lots of reasons, but the pipes leading to the bioxide plant will be such a construction that they won't be susceptible to, I guess, corrosion. And Randy, you can jump in here. The agreements with the intermunicipal agreements with the neighboring towns require us to have control, and that's where the bioxide goes from where it is location further down the line to protect the pipes between us and the neighboring towns and their pumps. And at their pumps, they also have the same kind of setup. So the driven force was taking care of the agreements with the intermunicipal agreements with the neighboring towns. I don't know about I was told that they have odor mitigation strategies in our our pump house.
Okay. So my apology, I have to leave now, but I'll follow up with you all on that. And again, my apology for leaving, but had another commitment, which I'm now 7 minutes late for. So thank you all very much. Wish you all well.
Thank you, Randy.
Thanks,
you.
Randy.
So why is bioxide? There's not enough space in the area where the pump stations. I mean, the bioxide system is not a very large system.
I think there's also something to do with the floodplain.
The floodplain.
The getting the permit to use it.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Pipes are running from the wet well to pipes are running from the wet well to past the bioxide location. It's the force main, I believe, correct?
So it's the what I understand is the bioxide plant will have a station or garage or whatever you call, will have a bleed and feed system into a mixing thing, some kind of mixing thing, and that force main will then exiting the town, and that's from then on in, it's a different type of pipe, like cast iron, ductile iron, or something like that.
It's ductile iron.
And that has to be protected because it connects to the neighboring towns, same kind of system. And we're not getting IMAs if we don't have that control, which we plan to do, and that's fine. The question, I think, is what happens between our wet well and put it in there. And I think it's difficult to get a permit for it to store the chemicals there on site and have a bleed and feed.
Right. So, Jason, do you know what kind of odor mitigations Fuss and O'Neill is proposing in the wet well itself? I think the wet well is going to be a problem.
Yeah, in the wet well itself, they're proposing a carbon unit, so that will treat the actual air, whereas bioxide you treat
Treat
the
the
flow,
problem.
so the odor is not generated at the pump station. It's a slightly different approach where the odors could be generated, but then they'll be treated before they're discharged to the neighborhood.
So,
And they're also going to add some aeration into the wet well to mix
Yeah.
it up and keep it fresher, keep the dissolved oxygen up.
would it be possible to run a 1-inch line from the bioxide location into the wet well? I mean, the pipe, there's gonna be a trench there. It's gonna follow the force main.
You're talking
You're
about
gonna
a
go from the wet
mile?
well. I'm sorry, Rich?
You're talking about a mile? I
Yeah, it'd be a couple thousand
I
feet
don't-
at least. Yeah.
that's, well, from a specialty chemical experience, that'd be crazy. But then again, petro refining plants do that. It's just, as long as you
Well, I wouldn't
realize
rec-
that your source has got a control at the location that it's dosing, and then you have a supply source. So it's kind of like a mini tank.
I would never recommend it if there wasn't going to be a trench that went from the wet well to the location we're talking. And that trench is the force main. It's gonna come out of the wet well, it's gonna go down, and eventually the bioxide location is gonna be near the force main where it's gonna be injected directly into the force main. I mean, maybe the bioxide doesn't, I don't know why it would break down over a mile if it was pumped a mile.
It's not
into
a
the wet well.
breakdown. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to suggest as a breakdown. It's a loading thing. So you basically, it's like, imagine pressurized water line. So you have it in some remote location. It's a big storage tank, and you got a line going through the factory, or in this case, the street. And then you have a mini well or mini source that then puts in the right amount. The controller
okay.
puts in the right amount, and it's that far along is unusual. Let me put it that way. If you generally they do that in the chemical plants where you have something that's like hydrogen or something that's difficult to store safely, and that way you minimize the risk, and you basically, but you have a plan that you're using this volume all the time,
Right.
and it's a big volume, so it's a challenging engineer position, I would think.
Well, I guess, I mean, the only concern I have is that the wet well is in a location that if you have odor problems, you have a real problem. It's in the, probably not so much in the summer, but in the spring and fall, it's not going to be cycling. I don't think it won't be cycling as much as in the summer, that's for sure. Odors from a septic wet well are they're not local. They definitely disperse quite a bit.
So is that saying that the carbon system mitigation is not going to work?
Well, it may work. The carbon mitigation system might work. I mean, they have great systems now, but I always feel better. I would feel better if we could treat the problem where it arises. I mean, I would still keep the carbon mitigation system there. It's a sensitive area, right, where we're going to put the wet well, but if there's a problem with the carbon mitigation system and it doesn't work as expected, what are the other solutions to fixing the problem, I guess is what I'm thinking. Whereas I know that if you throw the bioxide in it, it mitigates the need for that. But if you even have it, it's just another step. If you run bioxide and it didn't mitigate the system, you have a carbon backup. If you have the carbon backup as your main thing, what backs up the carbon? I don't know if there's many other solutions to that problem. If there were a problem, and Jason probably has more experience with carbon capture and not carbon capture, but carbon filters and stuff, how do they work? Should we expect problems?
Carbon's pretty reliable, and low maintenance. There is a point where all the carbon it's absorbed, all its absorption capacity has been used up, and that's when the carbon has to be changed out. So that's just something that needs to be monitored. When you start to get breakthrough of odors, then it's time to swap out the carbon. And then, typically carbon works. The downside to carbon is if you have to do that swap out too often, it becomes less cost effective than some other technologies. But when the carbon is fresh, it's a pretty reliable technology.
Steve, I got a question. This is James.
Yep.
Who's going to maintain all of this? I mean, who's going to track the carbon breakthrough, the dioxide chemical?
Well, I
Is that going to be a
think,
separate entity or?
I think that the other IMAs are contracting with the town of East Lyme to maintain the system, and since we'll be part of that IMA agreement eventually, we'd be doing the same. Is that correct, Rich?
Yeah, we're going to have a maintenance repair organization. We're not hiring a full-time person or having a staff on to do it. It's cheaper to have a maintenance repair organization that basically there's no finger pointing, and it's just somebody that has, these are all going to electronic signals, and then have someone go in and check to see that everything's running okay. And
In
that's kind of
general-
what's done in other places as well. Sorry.
In general, James, in general, the neighbors will let us know when that carbon fails.
Well, I'm sure.
It's pretty unpleasant. So I guess without bringing the bioxide to the wet well, that's it. I just wanted to discuss that. And it is required by the other WPCAs for the corrosive purposes. So that's now I'll take care of item 3. I guess no action. Jason, you have any other questions on the bioxide location?
No, we didn't have any other concerns with that. Yep.
All right. And then I wanted to discuss the interpretation of the DPH authority to regulate non-potable wells. And if this group feels as though it may be worthwhile to find out where the Department of Health is getting their authority to regulate a non-potable well, because based on what the scenario they're citing is, even if the well is disconnected from the house, but within 25 to 75 feet and is used just for irrigation, we would still have to double wall our pipe and sleeve it, based on the fact that someone could get sick if there was a leak and they decided to take a drink out of a hose. I mean, you're talking about an extremely improbable circumstance in which someone's going to be affected by non-potable water or non-potable well. And we're talking, a large increase in construction costs to sleeve the pipe for something that I don't even know if they're interpreting their authority to regulate the way they should. I can understand potable water. I mean, they're responsible for the health of, the citizenry. So potable water is certainly a health concern. Non-potable water, however, could be. I mean, I don't know. I've never run into this before. I don't know if it's something that they've decided to push or
Hey, Steve.
yes,
Frank here.
yes, Frank.
Listen, the DPH derives its authority from Connecticut General Statutes 19 Alpha-36, paragraph D, subparagraph 2. They have the authority to tell you that they consider your well to be, your irrigation well to be unsafe. That may cause, create an unacceptable risk of injuries to the health or safety of persons using the water to the general public or to any public water supply. The local director of health may issue an order requiring the immediate implementation of mitigation measures up to and including permanent abandonment of the well. So that's where they derive their authority.
Well, but I don't know if they have the authority to make us sleeve our pipe.
Oh, they definitely do.
That's the mitigation measures.
They definitely do. If we want funding, and we want funding.
We're not getting money from the DPH.
The DPH has a say in getting the Department of Environmental Energy Protection, and I can tell you, they can stop it. We submit our application and the treasurer goes, "Is everything signed off?" We have to have a lawyer come back and say everything's signed off. If there's some outstanding thing the DPH has done and the DEEP has not overridden them, then it's that we can't get that letter that says everything's cleared.
Well, would the DEEP override them on a non-potable well?
They told us that they gave us guidelines of what they want us to do to make every effort. And if we get some resident that says that refuses to do it, something like that, they may override the restriction from putting the sewers in. They would suggest the DEEP to the Department of Health to do their job if they're really so concerned to force the ban on that well. Our Department of Health locally has said that they will not force people to abandon their wells,
Right.
their water wells. Because they argue that the Department of Health, the state has that authority, and the state says the local health director has an authority. In fact, I think they both do.
Oh. So,
but that's why we're doing these things to help
Yeah.
people switch to some alternate source. We're not going to leave anybody hanging. You know.
Okay. I mean, so I gave Jason an example. I'll give you a quick example. It was a Davis-Bacon problem with an employee that went to the Department of Labor and said that I didn't pay him all his benefits. And I said, I did pay him all his benefits. And I went in there with my attorney and he said, well, you know, what do you have? I said, well, here's his benefits he earned. This is vacation. This is his health benefits. It's $13,000. It's this. They said, well, you can't apply all that money to health benefits and that. It has to be based on the hour. I said, where does it show that? And he said, well, that's generally what we like to see. And my attorney said, well, where in the statute does it show that he has to do that? He says, well, it's not, but that's our practice. He goes, well, if it's not in the law and he spent the money on benefits, then he's complied. And the guy said, well, technically, and after he said technically, then my attorney said, well, we have nothing left to discuss. And I walked out. But, you know, so these groups have certain ways of doing things. And that's all I was asking is, like, maybe the DPH thinks they have the authority, but I mean, do they have the authority? Apparently, it doesn't matter if they have the ability to stop funding, then they have the authority that way. But
it's a little bit more complicated. So they don't have the ability completely to stop funding. They raised a concern. It has to be responded to. And once Deep responds to it, they may say it's closed. And Deep
Okay.
could then possibly override them for the benefit of the whole project and make decisions. But the Deep has said, you still got to do this. So, I mean, our instructions about sleeving this stuff is going to all the private beach associations putting sewers in and us from the Deep. And must make the strongest effort possibly to convince people to abandon their wells.
Okay. All right.
And-
And that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Frank's worked hard on that. He's gotten letters out. So we'll find out how many people jump on board to abandon their well, and I guess we'll go by it from there. I mean, we know that the ones within 25 feet have to, no matter what. So it's the other ones that are up in the air. So we'll see what happens. And then we'll see what Deep says. Guess.
Yeah, we're doing
Right.
the best we can.
Okay. Thank you. And then on the last one is traffic control bid item. I did follow up with Tim Griswold on this. And I've spoken to Jason about this. And my feeling here is that we should put this down as an allowance item where the contractor makes no money. He's just reimbursed for his expenses, whether he uses a traffic control officer or a traffic control flagger, state certified, or whatever is required, as far as personnel is concerned. Because there may be times where the town feels as though you have to use a traffic control officer. And there may be times when they feel as though all you need is a flagger. Certainly in the winter, most likely you need a flagger, but there may be times where they feel that due to safety issues, you may need an officer. It's not unusual to have traffic control as an allowance item. It really protects the town because you only spend what's spent. If it's $150,000 item and the contractor spends $32,000 on traffic control, that's all you spend out of that item. They're not making money on it. I did a job recently I managed a job recently where the bidder doubled the amount of money they spent on traffic flaggers. So they wanted flaggers every day because they're making $3,000 a week off of hiring someone. Bidding is a very bidding is as a contractor, bidding is nuanced. So if you have money on an item, you're going to want to use that item because you have money on it. You make money. So having traffic control being up in the air, though I do believe that probably most of the work would be performed under flaggers, some may be performed under traffic control officers. But either way, if someone's low bidder on a project, and it depends also how low bid is determined, but low bidding can be low bidder or low bidder plus the alternates. There's different ways of breaking up a bid to kind of mess it up. But regardless, if the low bidder has money on traffic control, he's going to be fighting every day to have a flag or someone out there. Even if we don't feel we need to, all he has to do is say, I believe it's safe. And once that word's used, you can't say no, because if something ever happens, you open yourself up to a whole other mess of things. So for a lot of reasons, I believe that the best way of handling traffic control would be as an allowance item and not as a per hour item or whatever. And like I said, I had a discussion with Tim, and he is trying, he said, I'm trying to get away from using officers on other projects, and this won't be the same, but I can't guarantee you that every location won't require a police officer. And that is probably true. So. Are there comments on that?
Well, I think Wood and Kern's going to need some kind of guidance of what to put in. So if Tim is, I mean, I think you go start with a simple question. Is some kind of guidance that can be crafted. Summertime police officers. And I think we had the discussion in the past, and we seem to, generally there's a lot of volume there. Makes sense. The question is at wintertime. Sometimes it's a ghost town down in that section and off the street or off the Route 156. I think that's what Wood and Kern needs, but I'm not really sure I understand allowance versus per hour, because I thought Wood and Kern would say to the contractor, you need a police officer, you don't need a police officer, and they would bid it. So,
Well, right. So Rich, in Guilford, the prevailing rate for a traffic control flagger was $56.25 an hour, which comes out to about $450 for the day. The bid was $1,050 a day. So you're making $600 a day off of a flagger. It's not. You can say you have to use a flagger, you have to use an officer, but if it's a bid item, the value is determined by the contractor. You're not paying them $56.25. He could bid $20 and take a loss and say, I'm not going to use traffic control at all. That's another reason to have it as, so let's say he doesn't, all right. So let's say the contractor says, he figures the job out with all the regular numbers, and he comes up with a cost of, let's say, $4 million. And then he looks at it and says, well, I got $200,000 on traffic control. I'm going to shift $150,000 of that money to the pipe and take my chances that I'm going to use very little traffic control. So now he's getting reimbursed a percentage of these true actual costs of traffic control, but he's offsetting it with $150,000 that he moved out of it and into the pipe that has to go into the ground. Bidding is a huge nuanced way of maximizing as much money as you want as a contractor.
I get that. I think maybe I suggest maybe that you are going too much into the weeds. From our point of view, we want to try and keep the costs down and make the right decisions, but we also want to make sure that we have the guidance to say, we need a police officer. So I don't care how much you pay, put it in the contract for this bid, if we agree with you or not, there better be a police officer there. Or
Right, so
we say,
if
there's a flagger.
If it's an allowance, the contractor doesn't care. He's only getting reimbursed what he spent. He doesn't care.
Okay.
If you want a police officer every day, because I don't care, get a police officer. You're just going to reimburse me whatever I spend. I mean, there's no markup on it.
So that helps me understand what you mean by allowance. Okay, so yeah, it's a pass through.
It's a pass through. If he spends 50,000 out of the 150, the 100,000 is not spent. It goes nowhere. Versus if he bid $150,000, he would get it regardless, unless the hours didn't come up. But I guess all I'm saying is this, and normally there'll be an inspector on site, and after the first week, that'll all be arranged via the inspector. The inspector will say, listen, you need flaggers here tomorrow, or I want a cop here tomorrow, because the inspector is ultimately the one that's responsible for the safety on that project. So he's not going to let someone say, I'm going to go across 156, but I think I could do it with barricades. That's never gonna happen,
Well,
once you start working, there's a relationship between the contractor and the owner or the owner's rep that gets worked out very quickly, and things just flow. I mean, Jason won't know whether we're using a copper flagger. I won't know. You won't know. But the person there will know and will be, in charge of that.
allowance is fine by me, the way you describe it. Not that I make the decision here. Is there a negatives? Is it like the contractors would say, look, you're making an allowance and you're taking money away from me. So I don't like that. I don't think we're going to have, I mean, I don't know. I mean, is there, whenever I look at a decision, I try to look at the pros and cons or try to figure them out. Is there a con? Because it doesn't sound like a con.
Well, usually for something like that, you add a percentage, 5% or 8%, as pass through for the prime contractor to do the paperwork.
Yeah, you can do that.
Instead of the full overhead. The full overhead usually would be 100% of the cost.
And then 5% added. Jason, what do you normally do on that?
Yeah, typically we'll allow some administrative fee. But yeah, more typically than not, we'll do an allowance. That most contractors seem to be receptive to that as well. So that seems to work for everyone.
And all this gets put down on that form that gets submitted to the deep for funding, right? So it's all going to be itemized.
Correct. Yeah, and they have to submit the receipts for number of hours and number of officers they had, and that all goes into the funding backup. Yep.
So and anything that's extreme, the deep kicks back and says, sorry, don't approve.
Right.
Keep us honest.
So, I don't know if we want to bring this to the full board or not, but,
I mean, if we're giving guidance to Wood and Kern and saying use an allowance, and that's somewhat controversial, that's probably an easy motion.
I don't think there'll be any, negatives. I think maybe some of the problem may be to explain what the allowance actually is to some of the other members, if we want to go into that, but we're not changing the cost of the contract or that, but if you want, put this on. So, Rich, could you, put on, that we're going to make a motion, to use the grinder, the WPCA will be responsible to provide, install, and maintain the grinder pumps. At the next full WPCA meeting.
Okay.
And the owner would be responsible for electrical costs, which run about $2 a month. And then I guess the other one would be, to guide Wood and Kern to use, an allowance item for traffic control personnel.
Yep.
Traffic control personnel.
Got it.
Right, because we're not talking about cones and stuff. That's another animal altogether, right, Jason?
Correct. This is just the labor for the flagger and or police officer. Yep.
Okay. I think that's it for items. Are there any, did I get correspondence and new business mixed up? Maybe not. Copied one of
You're in
yours.
course. You're still on, unless you're leaving the traffic control bid item. The next
think
thing
I
is
wanna
correspondence.
I think I want to leave traffic control. I did have some correspondence late from Mary Daly. I'll put in on the next meeting, but it kind of dealt with grinder pumps, and she was telling me that she has a concrete grinder pump. And she also did an FOI on, I guess that's for Rich's thing. I was copied on the FOI, but I guess it was brought up in our task force. An FOI on who has got who has received the letters and who we deem needs the grinder pump. Not the grinder pump, the well abandonments. And that was sent right after our last meeting, after she found out. I will provide the correspondence from Mary at the next meeting for everyone to review. That was it on correspondence. Is there any new business that we have to discuss? Hearing none. We can go to public comment. And I'm new at this, and so forgive me. I'm going to obviously give people a little more time since I had complaints the last time that people couldn't get through. So I think Kate Corn came on. I see Kate Corn. I don't know your name. If you could state your name and address. And as you know, or if you may not be aware, we will listen to your comment. Sometimes we will comment back at the end of all the questions or comments, and other times we just take them as comments and we'll consider them as a group at the next meeting. Kate Corn, please.
Hey, Steve, thanks. Brian Cornell here. I don't know how to change my wife's name off of the stupid screen, so I'll ask my daughter to tell me how to do that, or I'll ask Dennis. I'm at 310 Portland Avenue Extension, up on the short end of the street on the other side of 156. At the moment, I have no questions or comments for you, but I'll just keep tuned in. Thank you, Steve.
Oh, thank you. Is there any other person that has a question or comment? There's I see Richard Avesi, Jim Lampos, Colin Yankee.
Dennis Maluzzo.
I'm sorry, Dennis. You're actually in my group here.
Well, that's pretty sad.
You're in the group.
group.
I ignored the members. I'm sorry, Dennis. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. The WPCA and Connecticut Water had sent out to certain families Ledge Light Health District letter for Connecticut Water approval for year-round water use. None of you have lived in Soundview, so you don't know what transpired in 2010. And that is, there are no seasonal houses in Soundview. There was a court case that the town lost. Everybody has year-round use, providing they have potable water, proper sewage, prior to sewers. They keep mentioning that you have to make an application to Connecticut Water for year-round use. We already have it. Anybody who has Connecticut Water, whether it got shut off or not, as of December 31st, when they finish the system, is a year-round system. So therefore, I don't know why Ledge Light keeps harping on year-round. They were not the health district in 2010. Okay, so there are conditions in here, like a B100A. What the hell does B100A have to do when we're going to have sewers? It's an idiotic correlation. It doesn't make sense. Okay, that's that one. A couple of meetings ago, we had talked, or you guys had talked about the design of the force main, the water line, and the sewer. And it was my understanding back then, I want to say it was either the January or February meeting, that because the water line is on the west side of Portland Avenue and the east side of Swan Avenue and up the left side of Hartford Avenue, that the force main was going to be in the middle of the road and the sewer was going to be on Portland, on the east side of Portland. So there's 10 feet in between each thing. Obviously, that is not the plan, because now you're talking about moving the force main closer to the water line and moving the sewer line over more. The pipe that's on the bottom is the force main. At least that was the previous design. I mean, I'm sorry, gravity feed. The next one, 5 feet up, maybe 6 feet up, is the force main. And the one on top is the water line. How does poop in the bottom of that trench has to go up 10 feet to even hit the water line? I don't understand your concept of anything like that. If you're going to separate them, separate them. You have the whole width of the road to do it. You know, if it's a case that, you know, you only want to dig one time, that's fine. You dig half of the street, just like they did in Old Lyme Shores. I mean, they took almost that whole street to put in a water line. So, you know, that's my question on that. And the wonderful grinder pumps, this is a town project. The town buys a grinder pump, installs it, maintains it, and creates the electricity for it. You're talking 11 houses. They should be tied into one meter. The town maintains that meter. When we have our famous power outages, it's up to the town to start and put electricity to those grinder pumps via a generator and make sure everybody's house is protected. Or you guys are going to have one hell of a bill in court over septic in a basement or crawl space. That's what I've got until the next meeting.
Did Richard or J.C. want to speak?
Yeah, I do. Hi, my name's Rich Avasi. I have a cottage on 11 Swan Avenue. And I noticed you've been mentioning the wells. My question is that any wells that are within that 25 feet and 75 feet, does that include all the streets of Soundview or just where the force main is? Did you copy that?
Yes, yes, Richard. We'll try to answer some of the questions or comments at the very end of the whole. It's not like a question and answer thing.
No, I'm kind of new to this, so I noticed on my computer it says, I believe you could hear me, and I wasn't certain.
Yes, I can. I heard you. Thank you for the comment. We'll try to clear that up for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else?
Yes. This is Mary Daly. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mary.
Thank you. Just on a couple issues. Jason, I just got my electric bill for a pump that continued to run continuously when it fell off the housing. And it was $188 last month, and I expect it will be the same this month. So $2 a month is very, very low. I don't agree with that, and I can show you the bill if you'd like. The second, question I had was if your well is beyond 75 feet, are you still requiring those homeowners to abandon their well? And if you do, what is the compensation for that? How are you compensating homeowners who currently have working wells that they use on a regular basis and not sick at all? Third, when you speak about this wet well that is supposedly going to control or not control the odors, as you've admitted today, where is that wet well intended to be located? What is the location, the exact location of it? And the last question, I guess that's it for me for today, but I'll forward whatever else I come up with. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? All right, so I can probably address a couple of these things. So Dennis, the problem our WPCA is running into is that the force main is being installed by the other beach associations, and our sewer is being installed by the old line WPCA. So coordination is a, if they put the force main in first and we have to dig 6 feet underneath it all the way down Portland Avenue, that becomes problematic for us. It increased costs. So we want to avoid that. The regulations on water sewer separation are state Department of Health. I believe they're issued by the Department of Health. And they are what they are. You have to have, I believe, 10 feet of separation between a gravity sewer and a water line if the gravity sewer is within 18 inches vertical distance of the water. So if it's much deeper than the water line, you don't really need that separation because you're absolutely right. It's not going to flow up. But with a force main that's under force, you need 10 feet of separation because it could, let's say you had a 10 million gallon pond and you were putting it through the force main and you had a leak in your force main, you wouldn't know. It would just, that water would just dissipate into the ground and could, if you had negative pressure on the water side, get sucked into that pipe and contaminate it. So that's the reason that they have these things. But on the gravity, you don't. Mary, wells above, and we'll I'm not going to gloss over your comment about the electricity. I think that may need a little more discussion, which ties into Mary's. Any well over 75 feet from our system is not covered by any regulation, so is unaffected by us, and they're unaffected. So any well above 75 feet away, the regulation says between 25 and 75 feet, you have to do this. Over 75 feet, it's unregulated. So there's nothing we're going to do. That's for sure. Frank has worked hard on identifying people with wells in the area that would be affected by construction. We're sending out letters offering to pay for the abandonment and then get them hooked up to Connecticut water. It's best for everyone in the system because it's going to reduce costs and probably a lot of headaches for the homeowners because it's not a simple thing of if you keep the well, there's things that you have to do every year. There's maintenance costs and whatnot that Connecticut water will definitely make you do, which it's I think $150 a year to make sure your backflow preventer is working and functioning properly. So that's a cost right there that would be incurred every year. I don't know if you use $150 worth of water a year to irrigate. So, you know, we're doing everything as a WPCA to try to mitigate the costs to homeowners and make the transition to Connecticut water as painless and as acceptable as possible. I think that's all the comments I have. If there are any other comments from any other members.
I'd like to make one comment if I might, Steve.
Sure.
The B100A requirement requires for septic systems. When you get sewers, that requirement disappears. That's it.
So what? So
Go ahead, Mary.
I'm sorry, I'm not speaking. Sorry.
Steve, this is Colin Yankee from 10 Portland. I had trouble with my mute button, but the only question I had is I heard earlier in the meeting there was a date when the other associations are looking to start construction, and I missed that. Can you repeat what that was?
I don't think there was any specific date. We were talking about possibilities. So, you know, the other associations are close right now. You know, they're having review of their plans, the last review, I believe, by the state. After that, they can go out and bid, I guess, if everything's okay and they have all their permits. But I don't know the exact status of where they are as far as bidding and construction. I would be shocked if you saw anyone out there in the next 2 or 3 months, because it just takes a long time to bid and award. But you know, they're close, and so once their plans are done, they generally put a notice in the paper or notice out into the public saying, you know, bids are being requested for this work. They usually give a couple of weeks, a month to get bids in. They review the bids, they review the contractors. The engineer recommends to the WPCAs, we think this is the lowest, most responsible bidder. WPCA then will vote to either award or not award, and then the contractor has to come up with the bonds and stuff. So it's a you know, even if they bid it today, they'd have probably a hard time getting someone out there before June. But I don't know how close if I were if I had to say anything, I would think that I would not be surprised that sometime in the fall or early winter of next year, construction starts, but I don't have a date.
Yeah, because I have talked with Ledgelight Health District about waivers to basically go full-time on a part-time cottage, and have already said they will provide no waivers at all.
Yeah, we have nothing to do with Ledgelight Health District as far as that's concerned.
Their position was when sewer construction starts, then they're out of it. That was their position. So, you know, so I'm just trying to get a sense of where our timeline is. So, okay.
Okay. Sorry, I can't help more, but.
Right, but I mean, we're talking 2024, 2025 before we go in, 2023?
I wouldn't think it would be that long, but you know, you never know. The state slowed up because of COVID and everything else. I would think that we're shooting the Old Line WPCA is shooting to start as soon as possible. And we've had drawing review by the state already. At least one of the 3 drawing reviews by the state. So we're trying to get this out as quickly as possible, and have set some aggressive aggressive goals to get this started. So I don't think it's going to be. I most likely it'll probably be late 2021, early 2022. I don't think it's going to be in 2023 that we're bidding this job. I think that construction will start.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Steve, Jim Lampos here.
Hi, Jim.
Just to follow up on Mary's question, to clarify, when you refer to the wet well, is that the pump station at the bottom of Portland?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
Yes, it's the collection chamber for the sewage.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Rich, do you have any comments to what I said about timeline?
I would agree with you that I discussed earlier, I said that the private beach associations, I think their plan and targeting is beginning construction at the end of the summer, going to bid soon. And we would hope to go to bid soon after and try to fill up. As far as shovels on the ground, it's hard to say because there's a lot of things that have to be in place. But there's a lot of things that also have a timeline. You can't let this stretch out forever. And there's escalation in costs as well as other projects that are all coordinated with this. So, I think it's reasonable to assume earliest is probably the end of the summer of 2021 that construction starts, and that's the private beach associations, and then hopefully soon after the Town of Old Limes project will commence.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Seeing no other public comment, I'm looking for a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn, Steve.
All right, James Burge, seconded. Second. This can't be. Thank you, Frank. It can't be. It certainly can't be that fun where you all want to stay on here. Gentlemen, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending.
Steve, you technically have to say, take a vote.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All not? Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
Steve.
Bye now.
Night, everyone.
Bye now.
See ya.